successes and failures in here. One thing we come up quite often is political change. So you're saying the personality is very important. Yes, he is. When that person changes for political reasons, and that person was the initiator or the driver of the partnership, is that a common problem, or is it just us that's getting that problem? If there's a partnership between a government organisation, it's maybe trade partners, stakeholders locally, governments change, policies change, and the whole thing goes back to square one.
Thank you. Clearly, and I find this in many countries, the length that a DMO manager stays in office is directly related to how they manage the politics of their region and between their region and different levels of government. So politics is extremely important. That said, in my experience in Australia, I have found that if you can make or ensure that the industry supports the destination, the DMO, then it's not just the DMO versus government or something. It's about the ability for the whole destination to lobby and to continue the programs that they were involved in to start with. So politics is a problem, but I've found that successful initiatives which the industry support are a good defence against things that change just because the political parties change. Does that make sense?
It does indeed.
May I also add to that? We have, I think, a valuable publication, and Sandra may correct me because she's in charge of communication and publications. It's not about DMOs per se, it's about NTOs, which are not very different in the way we link them together and the way we structure them, sometimes different. It's called the structure and the financing of national tourism NTOs. We had done this a few years ago. It's available online, and you're more than welcome to visit it. Because it's the result of surveying so many examples of how national, regional, or city governments set about their tourism partnerships. Many of them are public-private partnerships, many of them are very, very predominantly public, some of them are totally private, but I think it's a publication that you may want to visit and see. I think Sandra and Yolanda, we need to take a second look at it now. It's been a while. I think it's been at least 3-4 years, if I'm not mistaken on this. But what the report, if I remember correctly, because I haven't visited it for a while now, but I remember skimming through it quickly a while ago, it concludes that there is no one solution fits all, definitely. You will have to see what is the nature of the governance in every situation, whether it's national, whether it's destination, whether it's city, whether it's regional, and adjust yourself to that. Some systems are more decentralized than other systems, some systems are more participatory than other systems. You need to be more flexible about this. The last comment I want to make is about the fast turnover, particularly of public officials, which is an issue that we suffer from tremendously in UNWTO. And it's more happening in the strictly public sector than it is happening in NTOs. Actually, national tourism organizations and DMOs, the destination management organizations, are probably some of the more permanent bases upon which we lean on sometimes. The minister changes very frequently, but a head of a certain organization generally tends to stay on longer. So we connect with them to try and present some kind of continuity. And I completely agree with Noel in what he said, that people make a big difference in our sector altogether, but in any endeavor of that kind. And we do have to deal with the issue of fast turnover of officers in charge, however you define them. But the important thing, I think the key to this, is to look for the more permanent faces and build a more established relationship with them. Sometimes it's not the first level, sometimes it's the second level. You need to maintain a good relationship across any hierarchy in any place, otherwise it just does not work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Please, Carlos.
I'm sorry, apologies for just intruding in here, but I think this is a very key aspect the Secretary General has related how on an ongoing basis, obviously we have to face changes in the tourism administrations. But governance is the key word in here on how governance is built, and the organization works extensively in trying to introduce governance models, particularly today when there are many countries that are decentralizing their tourism policy into local and regional administrations. And precisely the building solid private public partnerships that work makes it more difficult for a new politician to change, even though ideology could change. But if something is working well and it's working efficiently, the changes in politics are going to be a bit more difficult because they might not want to take risks of changing something that is working well just for the sake of changing it because a new ideology comes in place. So that, I think, highlights even more so the importance of building a solid PPP that could be a bit more difficult to dismantle, if I could say.
I just totally agree with you there, Carlos. That's actually normally our recommendation is the antidote or the cure to political change tends to be having a constant functioning private sector. So heads can change, but the structure continues. So that's very much what we suggest.
Thank you very much. Any other comment? Professor Eduardo?
Thank you. Yes, well, it's a pleasure to hear what you had to say, and it's a pleasure to see your report. It's a pity that we don't have a chance to see it before, so we will be more on the spot. But anyway, I've gone through it, and I think it should be congratulated because it's a fantastic presentation of cases. As you know, many of the experts in development in general, not tourism development, make now emphasis on going into an analytical way about development, not a presumptive way about development. Instead of using recipes for development, analyzing the cases, and then derive conclusions. And that's where I think my question comes. I mean, both your ambassador, Ambassador Breville, and the Secretary General, Carlos Boger, Yolanda, even have been pointing out the importance of governance and the importance of the political framework. Your ambassador has mentioned something that to me was the first time I hear political sustainability. We usually talk about economic and social and cultural sustainability, but environmental, of course, but not so often that we talk about political sustainability, and that is connecting with what Carlos had to say. So I'm missing in your book certain, for example, references. I don't see Acemoglu and Robinson. I don't see Daniel Roderick, for example. I don't see anything about innovation in public-private partnership, for example, Mazzucato. And I'm wondering if you're thinking at the very powerful institute that you have created now at Griffith, and with Professor Susan Bacon, who definitely is an expert in this, and yourself. I wonder if you're willing to go beyond that and derive some framework governance cases, as Carlos Boger was pointing out, for development connected with tourism. Knowing that we have been changing very much the framework of thinking in development in general and innovation in particular. Any chances for that you will develop some together with WTO perhaps, a framework for development in tourism? Thank you.
Well, firstly, I think that tourism is a very interesting industry because, and especially if you focus on tourism destinations, because a tourism destination in South America functions from a visitor's perspective in a fairly similar way to a tourism destination in Australia or Europe. Many of the roles and responsibilities of government, many of the restrictions or opportunities for businesses are the same. we have hotels, we have attractions, we have transport. Many of the parameters of tourism in tourism destinations around the world are fairly similar. That I think therefore provides the opportunity for comparison and perhaps for developing some insight into commonality, into some common ideas about how tourism works and may work best practice. Of course, tourism destinations are embedded in political structures and cultures and things which are all unique. But on the other hand, the business of tourism has to function in some sort of way. So that's a long way of saying, I think there is hope for at least learning lessons about best practices in governance of tourism, in innovation and product development. For example, all of those things do involve collaboration and partnerships and extending your networks around things. So I think there are opportunities for developing such a framework, but I'm not sure it'll be me doing it in the next year or so, but I'd certainly like to.
If I may add something, I just wanted to mention that all our prototypes provide a model of governance for innovative PPPs. And I think after a while, when we have learned from different exercises, we could be able to come up with something. Maybe all together with the academicians and so on, we could have something with some conclusions that could be useful for everybody.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?